Today is a special program. We have a great guest from Scotland, Glasgow. Welcome to CIELO FALSO, Mark Vernon.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Your work is located in disciplinary edge between sound art, music, and transmission. Are the disciplines dead? Or to create, we need hybrid mechanisms?
I don't think hybrid mechanisms are essential. I think that's where I find the most interesting points in between kind of music, broadcasting, sound art. Yeah, for me, that's those grey areas where it's not one thing or the other. And I don't think any of those mediums are dead. I mean, sound art in particular is on the rise. Transmission in different forms through podcasts. I mean, that's a kind of transmission radio format that's having a huge kind of boom at the moment. And really, I think more and more artists are moving towards working with radio as more and more stations move over to digital. It frees up space on the FM spectrum, and particularly in the UK, Ofcom, who run all the communications. In the past 10 years or so, have offered RSL licenses, restricted service licenses. So anybody can apply for them, a community group, kind of religious organisation, even individuals to do a radio station. I mean, it costs money to do that, but so they can have a short-term license to broadcast in the city that they live. So that's kind of opened up a lot of opportunities. Yeah, so I think these mediums are going through changes, but by no means dead. I think they're very much alive.
Okay. I am interested in understanding your approach to two ideas: sonic exploration and environmental sound.
Okay. Well, the vast majority of work that I do has a basis in recorded sound and particularly field recordings. So that's a huge part of the activities that I undertake, which take place in any given environment. And yeah, I find inspiration from the everyday sounds around me. Because I've been working with this as material for so long, I've kind of got to know what sounds will be useful or for what purpose. So I'm always on the lookout, always have my ears open, listening for material to work with. And as an artist who works with sound, the fantastic thing is that these, you know, the materials for my work are just kind of roundabout, kind of everywhere. It's not like a painter who needs to buy paints and canvas. My materials are out there. They're gifts to me almost for free, which is a fantastic thing. And so, what else was there in the question? Sorry, just going back to the question.
The sonic exploration.
So yes, well, sonic exploration, yes. I mean, really, it's through recorded sound. And one of the things that anyone finds when they first use a recorder and listens with headphones, whether it's a digital or tape recorder, is that the sounds are amplified. And this enables you to hear sounds that you wouldn't otherwise hear. And also you can place a microphone in places that your ear couldn't go, like kind of down a drain or kind of in a small space. So you can hear acoustics and sounds that you wouldn't normally be able to explore. And these sounds really fascinate me. And the exploration of sound, really, it's curiosity that drives it, really. And as time has gone on, I've kind of found out more and more things and looked at different ways of capturing sounds, and such as like hydrophones to record sounds underwater, electromagnetic transducers to record electromagnetic interference that's all around us from the electrical devices that we use every day, contact microphones which pick up vibrations. So there's a whole kind of world of sound that we don't even normally hear to explore as well.
Okay. It is interesting how the notion of time in your work is introduced. I think of obsolete media and what you call reappropriation of found recording. What implication does time or entropy have on your work?
Well, for a start, sound is a time-based medium, so it's in everything that I do and everything that I work with. But more specifically, I think the thing is, I'm very aware of a recorded sound as a recording, in its nature as a recording. And part of this has come through working with found recordings, as well as my own recordings that I make. I collect old tapes, dictaphones, reel-to-reel tapes from flea markets, always looking for sounds that other people have recorded or voices. These kind of things fascinate me. They're like little windows on the lives of other people that you've never met, don't know, they may be alive or dead. And there are these kind of little fragments that exist. So it's these kind of things that have made me very aware of time in the work that I do. And more recently, I've focused on this very specifically in kind of a series of pieces I've kind of named audio archaeology. So it involves making contemporary field recordings of a particular place, but also using found recordings from that place as a way of digging back further in time into the past. So if I was perhaps in a location recording for a week, I'm only going to get, what was happening in that space during that time. But through these recordings of other people that may have been recorded 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it enables me to create a portrait of a place, both in time and place.
Okay. Move to the idea of a radio. It's very paradoxical that a medium that through the new technologies, internet, become massive, but at the same time, it seems that it's not a listening tradition due to the appearance of other media, Spotify, YouTube, etc. You write on your website, radio as an art form, as an ability to create a sense of community. At UDLA, we are interested in the concept of community. Tell us about your experience with sound and communities. For example, your project Sound of the Modern Hospital.
Well, that project came out of a residency at a hospital, Forth Valley Royal Hospital in Larbert in Scotland. And the remit of the residency was to work with the hospital radio department. So in the UK, hospitals have radio stations, little local radio stations run by volunteers. And having worked with radio in the past, this was a great opportunity. One thing I became aware of very quickly was that these were mostly amateur hobbyists who were doing radio just for their enjoyment, and they would do mostly music-based shows. But I was really interested in the idea of trying to get patients' and staff's voices on air. It's a radio station for a hospital, yet it didn't refer to the hospital itself or the environment. So I worked on several different projects. One of them was kind of an ambient radio station for particularly aimed at people who couldn't sleep at night, who had tinnitus or insomnia, or just out of kind of worry or pain, kind of had difficulty sleeping. And this was made from a series of interviews with patients and staff about sounds that they found relaxing or calming. And so originally I intended just to create a soundscape of these sounds, perhaps with kind of ambient textures and tones kind of with it. But the way that people described those sounds was so important and very personal to them that I wanted to include that in the piece. So it has voices, kind of more abstract material, and the sounds that they're describing. And that was a great opportunity, really, because it kind of made the community of the hospital kind of apparent to the patients who were listening on their bedside monitors. And radio in itself is a fantastic way of forming communities. I've run numerous different radio projects in the past, radio art projects, which are focused on the arts community in Glasgow.
Arts community?
Arts, the kind of wider art community, so artists and musicians. And in Glasgow especially, there's a huge crossover between art and music. So many bands have kind of members who've been through art school, and some of them continue making art or just become musicians, but there's always that kind of crossover. So it's a really kind of rich scene to kind of pick up on. So projects like Radio Tuesday and Radiophrenia really kind of play to that. But also other projects such as Hairwaves, which was a radio station focused on barbers and hairdressers in Glasgow. So it was radio about hair and hairdressing, and mostly people's disastrous stories of terrible haircuts that they've had. But this was focused specifically on that community. It was open for anyone else to listen to as well. But yeah, I think radio is a great way of bringing people together. And in projects like Radiophrenia, we also have an open call, so anyone can submit work to the station. So it's a way of people contributing and participating, but also listening. And I would say probably the majority of our listeners are also participants. So it's really, yeah, that's kind of formed a kind of listening community, and as well as tuning into their own works, they listen to works produced by other people, and it starts to create a dialogue between them.
Nice. Just the next answer is just Radiophrenia, your project. Let's talk about Radiophrenia. Radiophrenia is a temporary art radio station, a 2-week exploration into current trends in sound and transmission art, broadcasting live from Glasgow Centre of Contemporary Arts. The station aims to promote radio and art form, encouraging, challenging, and radical new approach to the medium. It's a very interesting project. What are you exploring through this experience?
Well, I mean, Radiophrenia, I should say, is a station that's co-curated and co-managed with myself and Barry Burns. So we select the work that goes onto the station. But really, most work that fits our remit, we would broadcast. Oh, sorry. Can you just remind me of the question again?
It's about the project, this Radiophrenia. It's what are you exploring through the experience?
Yeah. So, well, really, Radiophrenia is a platform for other people to use. Although we occasionally broadcast our own works, it's primarily for other people to use. So we create this radio space and then open it up for people to contribute. We commission some live-to-air pieces and some productions, but the majority of it is work that is sent in to us by other people. So, I mean, really, we're trying to explore the possibilities of what radio art is or can be. That's really the goal, and to provide an alternative to mainstream radio. So really, one of the ways we make decisions about what work fits or doesn't fit is if it could have been broadcast on a conventional station, then generally we won't play it because it's not. If it's purely musical work, we won't play it because there's so much music radio out there already. So really we're interested in work that is conceptual or that uses the medium of radio to its strengths.
Okay. What is the difference that exists in your work between space listening, for example, in a building, inside of a building, versus mobile listening, like the methodology of workshop of today, sound walk? What is the difference?
I mean, I would say that both of those come into play when I'm making recordings. I think it's interesting to capture sounds when you're on the move, when you're moving through spaces, because that way you can hear changes in acoustics or changes, you know, if you're next to say a particularly loud sound, you kind of hear it dissipate as you move away from it and another sound come into play. So, I mean, walking and recording is a really interesting approach, but often I will focus in on a particular sound and try and capture that. I think both of those sit side by side. But there are artists who use the idea of kind of walking and sound. Particularly I'm thinking artists like Janet Cardiff, who creates these sound walks she creates a soundscape from the sounds that the walk takes place in. So you listen on earphones and she's speaking to you and you hear her footsteps and your footsteps start to fall in line with her footsteps. And she's talking about things that may or may not be there. So you're kind of following the same route as her. So I think works like that are really fascinating, and they really, really play up to the kind of moving and recording aspect. But mostly I probably record kind of static, kind of in place. But also actually just moving the microphone around. You don't have to be walking. Changing perspective is a thing that I do a lot. And I kind of equate it almost to like a kind of a film, really, when you've got long shots, close-ups. It's trying to capture things from different angles and accentuate those differences.
Move to the idea of space. At the School of Architecture, we have an ongoing discussion about the relationship between space and sound. What can you tell us from your experience of this relationship?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Well,
space
I mean,
and sound.
I mean, all sound occurs in space, and I guess this brings me back to thinking about acoustics again and the acoustic properties of different spaces. You know, recording in a tiled bathroom is completely different to recording in your living room or in a church or cathedral. Each space is unique and has unique properties, and I think that's one of the things I'm always very aware of when I'm making recordings. And again, trying to get different perspectives. So recording kind of wide to get like the full kind of ambience, but also recording very close up. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I say, I think kind of space is an essential part of sound. If there is no space for a sound to occur in, then there's no sound. So, I mean, those things are always, yeah, kind of in relation with each other.
Okay. And for finish, to answer your influences, about reference, what are your influences?
Well, I mean, that's a huge question. I mean, my influences, for one, I would say my record collection, which is, you know, there's countless artists. I couldn't even kind of start to make a list. But also, like I said earlier, the sounds around me are a huge inspiration. And also, I guess, early experiences. I work a lot with tape. That's been an ongoing theme, and I'm very drawn to the medium of tape. And I always remember the first instance of hearing my voice recorded. Our granddad donated his old reel-to-reel recorder to our family, and my dad secretly recorded us having breakfast and then brought out the recorder and played it back to us. And that was a huge kind of formative experience, really. But we use this tape recorder to record like Top of the Pops, the kind of like current kind of, and we recorded over all of this stuff. And my granddad was a refugee from the war, a refugee from Poland. And he had sung these kind of songs from his homeland onto these tapes. And only years later, when I listened back to this kind of the things we'd recorded, like Top of the Pops, and then all of a sudden a snippet of my granddad singing kind of a heartfelt song in Polish. And I realized that we'd been erasing this history, like recording over it. And that, I think that made me kind of keenly aware of the preciousness of this recorded matter and how important it is to preserve it. And that's what I'm trying to do in a lot of my work. You know, the recordings I use are kind of cast away, unwanted. Whoever recorded them is no longer interested in them or is possibly not even alive. But I kind of want to kind of give them new meaning and new relevance by using them in the works that I produce.
Okay, and for the end, and speak about politics. What do you think about Brexit?
I think it's a disaster, really. I mean, for the country, it's a terrible thing. Most kind of liberal, kind of left-leaning kind of people, which is the majority of the arts community, most of the people that I know were completely against it and horrified that it's happening. I mean, we probably have to make the best of a bad situation. I kind of still hope, in a way, that there's a second referendum, because I really believe that if there was another vote, now people understand the implications of what it means, that it wouldn't go ahead. But it doesn't seem like that's going to be an option, really. So, I mean, it has all sorts of repercussions. You know, for me, as an artist and musician, it's going to make kind of traveling kind of very difficult in the future for touring. But, you know, well, for anyone like traveling. And who knows what damage it's going to do to our economy, really. It's a worrying time.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Gracias, Marc. Thank you.